Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head away up to the Highlands today, and this beer comes to you from the little island to the north of Inverness called the Black Isle, a small village at the north of that island called Cromarty, and this is a brewery who are pretty damn good in my opinion. So we're going to revisit Cromarty Brewing Company, and today we're trying their 3rd anniversary ale, which is described as being a caramelised fig Belgian quad. So the last beer I think I reviewed from these guys was actually the 2nd anniversary ale, which was this really big beautiful barley wine ale, so I'm sure this one will be just as good because it is one of the special edition beers that they do. But I know that you can actually get these beers in Australia and New Zealand now, and probably over in America and Canada you're starting to find them too. And if you're trying Scottish beer for the first time and you're used to the American styles of beer, then this is a brewery that I really would recommend you try, because all of their beers are hugely consistent, full of flavour. The dark ones are really malty and beautiful, the lighter ones are really hoppy and just delicious. So you know, this is a Scottish brewery that you really do want to give a go to, and the brewer is very talented. He's a graduate of Heriot Watt, so a very talented brewer, and I really would recommend that you try the Cromarty Brewing Company. A very up and coming brewery actually, very young, but they will be quite established in the fairly near future, I'm sure. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through quite a brief history of the brewery. It'll only be a minute or two long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I've done from Cromarty before, and I will add to that in the near future, I'm sure, because as I say, the quality of their beer is pretty good, and they're becoming quite prolific as well. They do have quite a few different beers available these days. But as I told you, Cromarty Brewery is another one of the Scottish breweries that have appeared in the last few years with this kind of booming Scottish craft brewing that we've had. But this one is located about 20 miles away from Inverness on the small peninsula called the Black Isle, and this particular brewery is from the little village of Cromarty at the northern side. Of course, in Munlochy in the south you have the organic Black Isle Brewery as well, which do produce some very good beers too. But apparently small scale home brewing was very popular in Cromarty during the 17th century, and in this period a lot of the grain grown on local farms was malted for use in ale and of course in whisky as well. But the introduction of the London porters led to large amounts of this grain being exported, which put a bit of strain on local landowners who were being encouraged to form their own breweries at the time. But the original Cromarty Brewery was established by George and Alexander Ross back in 1790, and it's located next to a burn on the eastern extremity of Cromarty village at the corner of Miller Road and Burnside Place, and it was actually quite a large brewery considering the times, and it's thought that the port of Cromarty was actually used to export beer as well, and this was also in addition to the cereals of course that Black Isle was renowned for. But this particular brewery hit financial difficulties in the 1820s when several whisky distilleries were opening up, and the Black Isle, and they ceased operations in the 1850s. But this particular brewery, the new one, the Cromarty Brewing Company, this is a family run business that consists of Craig, Chap and Jenny Middleton, and Craig is a graduate of the famous brewing programme at Heriot Watt University, which has produced a number of well-known brewers. For example, Baldur Carrison of the Einstök Brewery is another graduate of this programme. But while studying at Heriot Watt, Craig had been well known to produce beer in his student halls and flats and flat basements and things like this. But after he completed his degree, he worked for a period in Odell's Brewery in Colorado and also in the Cairngorm Brewery over in Aviemore. But while working in these breweries, he decided that he wanted to put his own beer on the market, and so he applied for grants and bank loans to finance the brewery. And Craig's dad, Chap, is actually the brewery engineer, so he's quite involved with a lot of the maintenance of the brewing equipment, while his mum deals largely with the kind of admin side of things and sales and stuff like that. But work on the actual brewery building commenced in the spring of 2011, and this hectic year culminated with the production of the first casks of beer on the 19th of December 2011, just in time for Christmas actually. And there's also a blog on the website as well where you can keep up to date with the latest goings on at the brewery, but you'll probably get more out of the Facebook page, and I'll put the link for those in the description for you below, like I said. But anyway, that's your kind of brief history of the Cromarty Brewing Company. So just to list a few of the other beers you get from these guys, there's the Brewed Awakening, which is the purple labelled one, a coffee infused stout, Red Rocker, which has a red label, a red dry hoppy extravaganza beer as they describe it, Hit the Lip, which is a green labelled one, it's a fruity hoppy heaven as they call it, Happy Chappy, which is the is, I think, the orange labelled one, and this is a pale ale, and they've also been brewing one called Rogue Wave as well, which is probably their best beer in my opinion. That's a really, really nice one. It's a really big IPA, and they've also got the Ghost Town Porter as well, which is really nice, and there's one called Cowabunga, which I think is somewhat between an IPA and a golden ale, and so, you know, all of these beers are hugely hoppy or hugely malty, so they're really full of flavour, and you really do want to check them out as well. But they've got various ones that they brew only for cask as well, but I believe they're starting to bottle more and more of them, so most of the beers they produce are going into bottles too. But anyway, let's actually get on to the tasting of this beer. So this is an 11% quadruple beer. This beer style was actually kind of pioneered by the La Trappist brewery over, I forget whether I think they're Dutch rather than Belgian actually, but they really kind of put this style forward, and the very famous West Vleteren 12 is actually also a quadruple beer. So from what I remember, it's a nice big bready yeasty beer, and it's got a lot of red fruity esters in it, some big dark caramel, and you can also get a little bit of a kind of tropically fruit flavour from these, a sort of peaches flavour from what I remember too. But anyway, let me just bring up the camera and let you have a little quick look at the artwork with this one before we open it up here. So yeah, as you can see, this is the kind of typical artwork that you'll get from Cromarty Brewing Company. They've all got this kind of label, but they are different colours depending on the beer. And this one is the label's exactly the same as the second anniversary ale, except it says third anniversary rather than second. It does say a little bit on the back. It says, "It is with great pleasure we at Cromarty Brewing present you with our 3rd year anniversary ale. I contain absolutely no chemicals, preservatives or cheap nasty ingredients. Instead, I am a jam-packed full of quality ingredients, international hops, Scottish water and fermented with an authentic Belgium yeast strain. I am a bold Belgian quadruple aged on fresh caramelised black mission figs. I am a mark in time. Thanks for believing in us throughout 2014. At the Cromarty Brewing Company we believe that our passion, enthusiasm and quality beer brewing skills blended with the finest locally and globally sourced ingredients make beer that is truly worth believing in." So yeah, that's their motto, by the way, beer worth believing in. So you see that, you know it's on Cromarty Brewery. You can't really see the bottle cap on this one, but the bottle cap just has this kind of wave symbol on the top of it there, and the kind of sea wave. So yeah, so let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting then. Oh, as you can see, that kind of went flying everywhere, but yeah. So as you can see, nice kind of smoky opening there. You can smell the fruit off that as it came sort of flying out. I'm not even sure the bottle cap's actually stuck in the bottle opener there. But this guy is an 11% beer. I couldn't find out what hops and stuff they use in it, but I'm only going to drink about half of this. I'm going to share the other half with my old man because he likes to taste all the beers that I review for you on here. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. But yeah, as you can see, it's poured a really nice kind of reddish. It is actually quite a kind of reddish amber. It's kind of very, very rich kind of blood orange colour, I would say actually. It looks really, really nice. There's about a half finger of a frothy white head on there, but that's fading very quickly to be just a very thin foamy layer. But it looks absolutely beautiful. There's some big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass on this one. It just looks really, really nice actually. And you can see a little bit of carbonation, the smaller bubbles just going up towards the bottom of the head there, but not transparent at all. As you can see, if I put my fingers behind it, you can't see through that at all, but that might just be the glass. But yeah, definitely a hazy kind of beer there. Looks very, very nice though. So let's give this guy a smell and see how we get on. So yeah, as you would expect from the kind of Belgian style of beer, very kind of bready, yeasty aroma coming off this one. Quite spicy actually. It does smell a little bit like a sort of brown bread or a rye bread flavour that's coming off of this, or aroma, sorry. But it's got a big, dark kind of roasted caramel malt, which is exactly what you would expect from a kind of quadrupel style. But a big, nice toasted caramel malt is one of the key ingredients of this beer. But it smells absolutely beautiful. Not quite as big smelling as the barley wine from last year's one, as I remember. This is a bit more subtle, I would say, but it's still got all the things you would expect of the style of beer. So a big bready and yeasty aroma, which is what you would expect. There's a good bit of kind of dark roasted caramel in there, and there is a big spicy note, so it's almost as if it's got a good bit of kind of brown bread or a sort of cereally character in there too. But there's a definite presence from, if you sugar it up a little bit more, you can get a little bit more of the esters coming out of this. And there's a definite sort of smooth, dark, figgy note, and you can get just a little bit of the sharper plums as well. And I want to say there is a teeny, teeny touch of some kind of tropical fruit in there actually. And it's actually quite a common thing with with these quadrupels. It was a guy in Belgium that told me this. Usually you can get a sort of peachy aroma out of these beers. It's quite a dark peachy aroma, he says. But they always, in Belgium apparently, they always describe these aromas as being peach. So always pay attention for that. But you can, if you really get in this kind of red fruity ester nose that's in this one, there is a little hint of a kind of sharp peachy note in there too. So it smells very, very nice. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy. It comes in at 11%, and this is the 3rd anniversary ale from the Cromarty Brewing Company in Cromarty on the Black Isle in the Scottish Highlands. Slàinte. That's really quite nice, actually. What I will say, on first taste, it's very different from the actual Belgian quadrupels. It's quite different from that. And that's mainly, I think, there is a kind of minerally taste in this from the Scottish water, which is a nice little touch, I always say. But it is quite different, but it's full of flavour and it does taste beautiful. So it's quite a quirky quadruple is what I would say. Yeah, you've got a big bready and yeasty malt base, and that just blankets the middle of your palate in there. And there's a good little bit of spice in there. It's like a kind of mild sort of brown bread or rye bread flavour, and that kind of comes up in the middle of the tongue. But right on top of that, you get this kind of big, dark, slightly roasted caramel sweetness. That just goes in right on the top of the tongue there. It's really nicely done. Yeah, there's a big boozy caramel flavour right in the middle of the tongue there. This beer does taste really boozy, but when it comes in at 11%, that's what you expect. So it has all the components you would expect of a Belgian beer. This huge, big, bready, yeasty flavour that just blankets the middle of the tongue, that dark, boozy caramel on top. But the interesting quirk to it, I think, is this slightly brown bready, kind of spicy flavour that's in on top of it there. But yeah, around the edges of the tongue, the hoppy characteristic of this beer is definitely figgy. The plums and raisins, when you have plums and raisin fruits, they always come out as being a little bit sharper and a little bit more juicy, if that makes sense. The fig is a very, very smooth flavoured fruit whenever you try it. So the esters in this one, as you say, are definitely figgy, but when they say it's caramelised figs, that is really what you expect. So it's around the edge of the palate, it has this really smooth figgy flavour, which, you know, as a fig caramel, like I say, it's what you expect. I'm pointing out the obvious, but it's a very, very smooth hoppy character. So again, quite a quirky quadruple, I would say. But you get this little oily bubble that builds up on the front of the tongue there, just right behind the very front curve of the tongue. This oily bubble has a nice dark kind of roasted caramel flavour coming out there, but there is just a teeny little bit of a kind of slightly sharper plum and raisin flavour. It's really not very prominent at all. It's a very kind of subtle flavour, and I'm not really picking up the kind of slightly tropical peachy flavour. I'm not really picking that up when I did pick it up in the aroma. The Belgians, as I say, told me that's something you can get a little bit from quadruple beers, but I'm not really picking it up in this one, I would say. Yeah, no, it's definitely a big figgy flavour in this. The most prominent component of the beer, as I would say, is that big boozy caramel malt base in there on top of the kind of bready and yeasty and slightly brown bread flavour you're getting out of this one. So overall, the flavour, it's really quite nice, and it is very quirky for the style, I would say. I've reviewed the West Veteran 12 on here for you before. I've not done the La Trappe one, actually, but I'll need to do that in the future anyway. But it's a very quirky kind of quad beer. It's really nice and very interesting. So if you do like the style and you enjoy your Scottish craft beers, then this is definitely one that you want to have a go of, because it really is quirky, and it's from a very, very good brewery. So it tastes beautiful. That's the main thing. It is quirky and it has a few different things to think about on your palate. But in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, I would say definitely a full-bodied one. It's got a nice kind of smooth carbonation. It comes in with a little bit of attack when you take it in, and that helps bring out a bit of the kind of cereally, the sort of brown bready flavours that come out in this beer. But overall, it's a really big and quite boozy caramel malty component that's in this one. And it is just a little bit juicy, just very slightly juicy from these kind of fig flavours that kind of go around the edge of the palate there. And the boozy character in this one is really quite big, so just be prepared for that. But when it's 11%, and if you're used to drinking Belgian beers, it really shouldn't be much of a big deal for you. But overall, this is a really, really nice and quite quirky Belgian quadruple beer from a brewery who a Scottish brewery who I personally rate very, very highly. And hopefully I can review a few more of their beers for you quite soon. They've got a big range of them now, and some that I still need to go back and review. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. It's cool to see that the Cromarty Brewery are still thriving because they produce some really, really good beer. Really cool to try the 3rd anniversary ale, and I'm quite excited to see what they do for their 4th one, which I'm guessing will be released around Christmas time probably, because it says it was 2011 they were founded, so around 2014 or 2015 rather, I'm sure we'll get the late at Christmas time we'll start to get the 4th anniversary ale. But very cool to revisit them anyway. So as always, if you do happen to have tried this beer, please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts about it. It's always interesting to read them. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this review from Cromarty Brewery. I will review more from them in the future, but I've got some more interesting reviews coming up for you soon. But until then, slàinte for now.